Welcome to the Avert podcast, where we talk with some of the most creative people within North Texas and beyond. I'm your host, Michael Gibson Jr. This is a special edition of the podcast. I recently attended the 2018 Lone Star Film Festival, which ran November 7th through 11th in Sundance Square in Fort Worth, Texas. I had a blast meeting some of the festival goers and some fellow filmmakers. This episode features some conversations with a few of the people that I met. Before we jump in, I have a few announcements. First of all, I want to take a moment to acknowledge Stan Lee's recent passing. I never met the man. I almost purchased a meet and greet several years ago, but I passed on the opportunity thinking next time he comes around I would. He made, a couple years later, an appearance at the San Diego Comic-Con, most recently, and they announced that he wouldn't be doing any more after that. I had been a comic reader and collector for many years. My first book was one of the X-Men 2099 series that my father had purchased for me. I kept purchasing others, which upset my father, but my mother told him that she was happy that I was just reading, and I became a very voracious comic book reader and collector. My father eventually came around and bought me a bound book that was of the X-Men's Executioner song story arc for Christmas, which to this day is probably one of my favorite story arcs to date. But Stan Lee's characters will end up standing the test of time as modern fables and myths. But beyond that, he taught many kids like myself growing up to do the right thing, even if it's the difficult thing to do. And that no matter how different you felt in the world, that you belonged. And if you looked hard enough, there were people just like you, and that you were special. Thank you, Stanley. Another announcement, we recently did our drawings for the Wire Rims CD giveaway. Congratulations to the following folks: Tommy Oler, Adriana Rivera, Carla Ramirez, and Paul Matsumoto. I apologize if I butchered anybody's name, but congratulations to those winners. We also did a giveaway for a DVD copy of The Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich, which was signed by my most recent guest, actor Stephen Brody. Congratulations to Marina Martinez for winning that. Stay tuned, we will have more great guests and more giveaways to come. Lastly, I found out earlier this week that I won an Emmy Award for work on a news promo that I assisted with in my day job. This is my second Emmy win, so I have finally brought home a sister to my first win in 2011. I am very honored and humbled to work with this amazing talent that I have the opportunity to day in and day out. Thank you to everyone that has sent their love, support, and congratulations. Now, with all of that out of the way, here is episode 36 of the Avert podcast at the 2018 Lone Star Film Festival. Consider yourself warned. All right, now I am here with
Victoria Fratz
and Aaron Fratkin
and Zachary Morin.
I like the suspense that you gave in there.
Who could it be?
And tell me about your project.
So I produced a film called Electric Love. It is a romantic comedy set in the world of Los Angeles modern dating.
That just about sums it up. It follows 3 or 4 couples in Los Angeles, each using various dating apps like Tinder and Grindr, and their sort of intertwining stories and relations to one another.
I star in the film. I play Adam, and I'm one of the culprits that uses Tinder to, find the love of my life.
Well, let me start with you. Like, how have you? I know you're married, but have you ever been on any
on Tinder? No, I've never used them before. I found it really fascinating when I was on set and everybody was showing me their profiles and stuff. I mean, it would have come in handy back when I was dating, that's for sure, or at least I think it would be.
How did you meet your wife?
Wow, that's a long story. I don't know if you have enough time for that on this podcast. I met her back when I was 18. We didn't start dating then. She was a few years older than me, and I was still in high school. But I moved to New York City to study acting, and I was doing plays and stuff there, and I didn't know anybody at the time. So, and she had gone to the same high school as me, but graduated a few years earlier, and just we ran into each other, and then liked each other enough to move in with each other. Like a week later, and
Wow.
It's been on and off for a few years after that, and then we got married 2 years ago, and pretty happy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, as far as the project goes, like, how long did it take y'all to film? Like, what are some of the other points that you can give us?
Well, it took us 20 days total to shoot. Victoria did a rock star of a job producing. This was her first feature, but it felt like it was her 10th.
Thank you.
And like we were saying a moment ago in the Q&A, it was shot in about maybe 15 locations. So there was a lot to coordinate, but we were able to, fortunately, just with an amazing cast and crew, condense the entire shoot to 20 days, which we would still be able to take breaks in between shooting. So we would shoot for about 3 or 4 days, break for 1 or 2 days, let everybody rest up, recuperate, and then we would go back, shoot for another 3 or 4 days, and just sort of repeat that until we were done.
And I would add just the full context of from soup to nuts. It was maybe 4 months of script writing, and then a total of 6 weeks of pre-production. And then a little bit of that pre-production even flowed into the production. So then we have our 4 weeks of production. Aaron edited the film in about 5 weeks. And then we actually took a tiny little break before, like I would say a 2-month break while we were searching for our post house. Post was 2 months? Less.
I would say it was about 2 months of actual work, but, especially on this level of indie filmmaking, you are not always first priority. So the actual, time from delivery to, receiving the final product was probably like 4 or 5 months.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. I think all that totals around a year, maybe even a little bit over. So if anyone's listening, a year.
And what was the initial kernel of the idea? What was the inspiration for the film?
It really came just out of a place of like frustration, spending a lot of time using dating apps and going on dates that, are exciting at first, but then they just start to feel a little empty and just the nature of modern dating on these dating apps, they're not necessarily a bad thing. We're not saying, either one way or another, but they sort of create this atmosphere where you feel like there could be something better out there. And so it sort of led to this just feeling of frustration, which I felt like I had to explore in a script.
Yeah, and Aaron had sort of started already working on a draft when we met up and started our writing team. And then when I read what he had, while I thought there were some fantastic points, especially on the female side, I felt that as a female myself, I could kind of sharpen those. So that's where we pretty much started back on page 1. And while we still used a lot of the bones of what he had created, we just kind of started from scratch together.
Very cool. And then we're kind of out of time here, but you want to give people the information on the film where they can find more information for y'all? And,
absolutely.
And social and all that?
That's what it's all about, this moment. Electric Love is the name of the movie, and we have a release on video on demand platforms, iTunes, Vudu, Google Play, all of those good platforms, February 5th. And you can pre-order on iTunes right now, and please watch it because we would love that.
The full trailer is also available on iTunes right now.
Very cool. Well, thank you guys for taking a quick time to talk to me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
My name's Travis Ward. I was the director of photography on Good Feels on Wheels.
Ronald Short. I wrote, directed, and co-star in the film.
My name is Stephanie Thorson, and I starred alongside Ronald.
Very cool. Well, as far as writing was concerned, what was the inspiration for the film?
It was kind of a mixture of a couple things. I'm a rideshare driver as my day job, and I just pick up a lot of different writers who had interesting stories to share. And there was a seed from one particular ride where she told me a story about how she was going to Portland to meet a dude that she just met long distance, and before she made the trip, like, he called her up and said, don't. I'd fall in love with someone else. And she said, screw it, I'm just going to go to Portland to see it anyway. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of take that idea and just have it like, if she was already there, like she really doesn't have a say in it, like, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. So it came from that, and also from an older script I had that was about different characters in Austin, just like kind of visiting them. I kind of combined the two.
And all three of y'all are from Austin?
Yeah.
Well,
Well, not originally, but yeah, we
living,
live. Yeah, I've been there for 8 years. Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm from Austin.
Yeah. You are. Yeah. You're the unicorn.
And then, why don't you tell me about your character that you play?
Yeah, so I play a character named Opal, and she comes to Austin to meet up with a man she met in San Francisco. They kind of hit it off, and she's coming to visit him. Lo and behold, she gets blown off. He's quote-unquote out of the country, and she's just feeling really rejected and lost in a new city, and she ends up meeting Ronald through a series of events. I won't categorize whether they're fortunate or unfortunate. But yeah, she's a gamer. She's kind of a nerd. She's kind of awkward.
Now, how true to you is the character?
Sort of true. I mean, I'm a pretty awkward person. I use humor to, hide my true emotion. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't we all though?
No, there is she is a gamer. I'm not a gamer, but I do like a lot of nerdy things, and so it's interesting to like play a female character who's in a traditionally like into something traditionally male and kind of nerdy, and so. But
it seems that like the whole nerd culture has become so mainstream as of late. So
yeah. We are true nerds. We were here before.
Yeah. I was a nerd since birth.
Yes.
Hipster nerd.
Yeah.
And then, do you touch on the cinematography style that you chose to use in your film?
I mean, Ron and I, before pretty much any project, I'm kind of like, what's your inspiration for this? What's the kind of look that you're going for? We did have a pretty like tight schedule, but Ron, I don't know, we've been working together for years at this point, so we kind of have a simpatico relationship when it comes to that stuff. So we wanted it to look really natural, organic, not like overlit. Most of the time I was focusing on like, where's the big natural light source in the scene, and how do we just kind of augment that, clean it up, and just still making it look like nice, and not that it was, it's kind of like an invisible look. It should look really natural, even though we had a couple lights around.
Right.
Yeah.
When it came to cinematography, like what was it that drew you to wanting to become a cinematographer? And do you have any people that inspire you?
Yeah, there are a few. So when I got interested in filmmaking, it was originally through screenwriting, and that's because I went to school for English as a English major.
I minored in English.
Yeah, and I don't know how, but I got interested in screenwriting, and then when I moved to Austin, I kind of tried to get into the filmmaking scene. Ronald was one of the first people that I met, and then I kind of like had the camera. I wasn't really planning on getting into cinematography or being like a DP or anything, but as I like started working with a camera, I realized, oh, this is a nice mix of like art and science or technical, which that's kind of like where I like to live with the stuff that I do. Inspirations, really love Roger Deakins. He's one of my favorites. My current like contemporary DP that I love is Bradford Young. He's definitely one of my favorites. I have like a whole list at home of like all especially like the old school DPs that I like, but those are kind of the two paramount ones.
Very cool. Now, your film has made it into the Lone Star Film Festival. Like, what's next for y'all?
We're submitting to other festivals. Excuse me. And just kind of taking it slow. We're trying to see where we'll play next. I'm kind of trying to putting out everywhere that I could afford to, and just seeing how it goes.
True starving artist.
Right? Yeah. Once I get the next paycheck, I'll pay for more. But yeah, no, I hope to get some kind of distribution. We're taking our time with it. I don't want to rush anything.
Right on.
Yeah.
I guess any sort of last thoughts, anything else that y'all want to say about the film, filmmaking, and
I think that one of the reasons that people are responding really positively to the film is because while it's really a story about Opal and then eventually Wyatt, the ensemble is so powerful in the movie. It just really keeps the pace really nice, and the casting was fantastic. Every character or characters that they interact with is like a new fun pop of color sort of in the movie, and I think that that's a really strong point. Yeah.
how long did it take y'all to film?
It took, we had 10-day production schedule, which was, I think it was a weekend, and then we took a few days off, and then we did a stretch. And then we needed to do some pickups and reshoots. So it was 12 days total, but 10 was the production schedule.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say that seeing it all come together. I mean, I don't know. We've been working on this for in post for I don't know, about a year. You know? And you're just never really sure how it's going to turn out. Especially, I mean, this time we were we want it to sound good. We put a good amount of the post-production budget in the sound. And I don't know. For me, it really helped tie everything together. I think it is, like Steph was saying, it's a movie that lives or succeeds because it's moment by moment. It's not necessarily there's some huge revelation, or I mean, the characters change and they grow, but it's you're seeing these really honest portrayals, snippets of these people and their lives and just how they're going through. And I think seeing it on the big screen, I saw or empathize a lot more with your character, and just seeing everything. I mean, maybe it's because your face was huge on the screen. Now I could see
Don't remind me.
everything. No, it was great. It really hit me in a lot of ways that it didn't before. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, I think that the conversational nature of the movie, and it is slice of life. A lot of people were referencing Linklater, which I think was an inspiration. Yeah, it was a really big part of this style. And I also had a few people compliment the cinematography as far as the POV shots. So you really feel like you're living the experience with Opal.
Mm-hmm.
That's really fun. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. It didn't really. It didn't feel real to me until I saw it yesterday. I'm just, I've had my hands, all over this thing. So I'm too close to it, and I'm glad I got to finally experience it. Finally got to watch it with an audience and stuff. So.
And then, how much of would you feel ended up on the screen that was on the page?
I mean, there were some scenes we cut, just here and there that kind of slowed the story down, didn't necessarily add to it. And then, mostly the scenes which we trimmed down. So we had a screening with the Austin Film Society, where it was works in progress screening. They do that for filmmakers, and you just basically have a small 20-something audience, and they all give you thoughts on the cut you have.
Yeah.
And we didn't have sound in it. It was all temporary music, but it really helped us shave 10 minutes off. It was about an hour and 40. Now it's an hour and 30. So yeah. So that was really helpful.
Very cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking time to sit down with me.
Thank
Best
you.
of luck.
Thank you.
On the duration of this film and then your next projects to come.
Thanks.
And whoever's listening, support Texas film.
Oh, speaking of, tell everybody where you can, your website, social, all that.
Yeah, my main website is shortpicturesindependent.com. That has all the updates for all of our shorts that we put, and films, features films. So all of our stuff's on there.
My website is my name, StephanieThorson.com, And
You'll spell that for
yes,
everybody.
it's Stephanie with a PH and an IE, and my last name Thoreson, like the son of Thor with an E in the middle. Haven't said that before. And if you are ever in Austin, I am in a house troupe at Cold Town Theater, an all-women comedy troupe called Loverboy Comedy.
And my website is Travis Ward Video. Sometimes it's Ward, W-A-R-D, not Wood. Sometimes I apparently sound like I'm saying Travis Wood. TravisWardVideo.com. I just got it up. I have my reel on there, and I'm always looking for work, so let me know.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Lauren Cozy.
And you're out here participating, watching films for the festival.
Yes.
How's your experience so far?
I've loved it. It's seriously been so exciting, and I've met so many positive people that are like-minded and passionate and are sharing the same goals and dreams. And it's just really inspiring being able to meet people that are putting a lot of sacrifice and time into something that they love and they're so passionate about, and creating a story and creating art. And I've seriously been so inspired, but also it's just a great networking opportunity. Even though I'm not a part of any of these films here, but I've made so many incredible friends and just people that I want to hang out with and I want to create movies with and short films and do cinematography with.
So that's going to be your main focus is?
I want to. I have a corporate America job that I work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and so I'm trying to figure out how I can get into this full time, because the film community is so small here in Fort Worth, and so it's kind of hard to find work to do it full time. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, I think that a lot of it is definitely networking, and I would tell anybody, don't wait, create, create your own things.
Yeah.
Start, even if it's something small. The technology is at a point now where people have these sick, crazy cameras on their phones, and there are festivals that are accepting stuff that are phone shot and what have you, and stuff to be able to edit and stuff has become so much more reasonable and for people to attain. So don't wait, create the things that you want to see, and grab your friends to be extra hands. So it's don't wait for anybody else. You can take the time to do it yourself.
That's true. That's very true.
So where'd you end up going to school?
I went to Texas Tech in Lubbock.
And you studied
marketing and supply chain.
and that was to
get a business degree. And I mean, if I would have had the choice, I did have the choice. I shouldn't say I didn't have the choice, but I would say that I probably would have done film school if I had to go back in time, just because I've learned that money doesn't buy happiness, and I have a good job that makes decent money, but at the end of the day, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to have a job that you don't want to go to and be miserable for 40 hours a week. So I've kind of learned that you should do something that you love, even if it doesn't pay that well.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some of the films that you saw during the festival?
So I saw one yesterday morning that was featuring Josh Peck from Drake and Josh. If you guys watched Nickelodeon, he was amazing in the film. He played this really sad, depressed kid, and it was about him going through handling mental health and all the people that had hurt him in the past and used him and whatnot. And it was really interesting seeing him play a totally different character from Drake and Josh, because he was the funny guy, and then he lost a ton of weight, so he's really, really thin in the film now. I really liked that film. And then the other one that I saw was Strooper, which was basically a documentary about the rhinos that they're basically taking their horns off to use them for medicinal purposes, and they're valued so highly. And so they've got this huge issue with rhinos being endangered now in the wild. And there's a lot of like illegal things going on with it, with trade and just murder and a lot of other just crazy crimes. So I really enjoyed it. I saw those two, and then Sisters Brothers, I saw that as well.
Saw that one.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting film, and also saw the talk beforehand with the producer of that film, which he gave a lot of great insight into his rise through the film business and what have you.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how big he was. Like, he was the former president of the production at DreamWorks, and he directed like he produced over 82 films. He produced 50 Shades of Grey. He produced Moneyball. He produced the Oscars. Like, he's pretty high up in Hollywood, but he was so humble. I was like pretty surprised when I was listening to him on his panel and do the Q&A, and I got to talk to him and ask him a question, and he's just a normal guy that's just has the passion, and it's always inspiring seeing people that, I mean, he started out as an intern at like NYU, and then he kind of grew up and moved up in the company in Hollywood.
Do you have any last thoughts that you want to give to anybody?
I would say one thing that a lot of people don't really think about is that film in general is something that a lot of, especially film festivals, I should say, are something that everyone should support, because not everyone realizes how much work goes into it and how much passion, and it's being able to create, it's a form of art. And so really we wouldn't even have these film festivals if it weren't for people like locals or really anyone supporting and coming and watching the films. So it's just good to know that it's actually worth your time to come and support.
Well, thanks for coming out and supporting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice meeting you.
Likewise.
Well, I'm Adam Dietrich. I'm a filmmaker, and I've got a background in design and acting. So I guess what they call me is a multi-hyphen in the industry. I make my own movies, but I do a lot of other functions in the industry for other filmmakers.
And I met you yesterday, and I kind of wish that I had met you like sooner so that I could do like a dedicated episode. So I'll probably have you back at some point to talk about everything, because I'm going around talking to everybody, you know, that I'm meeting at the festival. But like, y'all have a film.
Yeah. So my best friend of 27 years and we co-wrote, directed, and produced this movie called Knowing. It's a short film. It's about 12 minutes, and it's I think it's unofficially the heaviest movie at Lone Star Film Festival this year. It's a super drama about a janitor at a school who witnesses a sexual crime, and then has to bear the responsibility of a witness and struggles with that responsibility.
Now, what was it that made y'all decide to tell the story from that perspective?
It's been a long process, not because it took us a long time, but because of not having as much skill with the festival world. So we wrote this movie over 2 years ago before Me Too, and so we had been impacted by this kind of circumstance through our friends and family, and I think a lot of us are in some way, whether we talk about it or not.
Right.
And we had seen subject matter in this world dealt with, although not very commonly at that point. I mean, we didn't have a movement. The artists would work hard and get the story told somehow, but every time we had seen it, it was either about the victim, or it was about the perpetrator, or it was about the relationship between the perpetrator and the victim. but the majority of us are not ever going to be a victim of a sexual crime. And the majority of us are not ever going to be a perpetrator of a sexual crime. The majority of us are going to be a witness in some way. A friend is invested in us and confided in us. We are walking by and we see something that we think is questionable, but we're not for sure. Or we directly see a criminal act and we choose to do something or not do something. And we thought, that's a story that's really interesting and compelling to tell. And we thought it's a really hard responsibility because the victim has had something happen to them. And that makes it very hard to come forward in sexual crimes. But they have a physical ramification and a spiritual, psychological ramification that motivates them one way or the other, and in a very different, very meaningful in and of itself. The perpetrator obviously has a very immediate physical, spiritual, psychological relationship to the event, but the witness, they don't have those kind of ramifications. It's a different ramification, and so it's almost like maybe a responsibility that someone has to their brother or their sister. Like they're not responsible for them. Their parents are responsible for them, and they're responsible for them. But in some way, there's an invisible bind, and you either act on that or you don't. And that's kind of what we were interested in exploring is, what with this burden and this responsibility, what does someone do without that physical provocation, Right.
Now, tell everybody, like your background getting into everything that you've done.
I'll give the brief history. I was in an orchestra class when I was in fifth grade. The teacher of the class stopped the class and during rehearsal and said, Adam, you suck. You're like the worst cello player ever. And everyone was shocked. I was shocked. She goes, but you're funny. You should go take acting classes. And she was being encouraging, I want to believe. And it ultimately led me, through a series of events, going to take acting classes as an extracurricular activity. And that family of theater became my family, my extended family. And so I grew up in the theater, had some incredible experiences in the theater, had made a best friend when I was in 7th grade, Elliot, who's my partner, my creative partner, not my life partner, but my creative partner. And we had built theater in high school. We went to college for theater, and then when we dropped out of college, we started our own theater, and we ran a theater and multimedia company for 10 years.
And that theater is?
That company was called the Butterfly Connection. It's no longer around, but we did it for a decade. I did it simultaneously as I worked for Hip Pocket Theater, which is an outdoor space in West Fort Worth. You got to go to Hip Pocket. It's still around. It's incredible. But after we transitioned from theater and multimedia, when the economy hit in 2006, 2007, we decided to get into film. We had some relationships that propelled us into the art department of film. And I began as an art director for a guy named Tom Huckabee, who started the Lone Star Film Festival with some other folks. He was making a movie that Bill Paxton was scheduled to star in and didn't have an art director yet. And they had stumbled into our theater while we were doing the first stage adaptation of Bob Marley's life. And I was directing, but I had designed the set because we had no money. He said he liked the set, and so I became an art director on his movie. And we made that. It was a great experience, but I didn't really know how to transition back into producing and directing from that. So I spent about 4 to 5 years just art directing other people's movies and helping other people make their movies on the side, younger people. And after about 5 or 6 years, I told Elliot, I need to make something. I need to get back into being a creator. And we started down the path of trying to make our own content. So we got back into writing, directing, producing, and that was about 5 years ago or so. So we've done it. The cool thing is, at Lone Star this year, we cast the opening night film, The Last Whistle. We had our short film, Knowing, premiere that we wrote, directed, produced, did everything. We didn't do everything. We had a great list of collaborators. Josh Pickering's the DP, and Jonathan Rudak's our amazing art director, and we have a great group of collaborators that we do a lot of stuff with. But we picked up all the slack, and then I designed the movie that closed last night, the Standoff at Sparrow Creek. So it's really cool having that kind of diversity of skill sets that you get to execute in a lot of different ways. That's probably been one of the funnest parts of our career up to this point. And it's also pretty fun to transition into just being a writer, director, producer too. But.
Very cool. Now, do you have any advice for anybody that's wanting to start off in the film business?
Yes, do it. I mean, the first thing that I tell anybody that has any inclination of doing film as a career, if you want to do something, go do it. Now, if you go, well, how do I do that? Well, you don't have to start at Marvel Studios. You can go and volunteer your time on student projects. You can go and get a little money together and shoot a movie on your iPhone. If you want to be a writer or a director or a producer, do that. If you want to be a gaffer or a cinematographer or a production designer, do that. It's not going to get easier to do any of those things by doing any of those other things. That's the one thing I learned during my 10-year sojourn in film specifically, or 12-year, is that I've done all of these things, but I always knew I was a writer, director, producer, because that's what I came from. That's what I loved. And I always knew I was an actor too, but I kind of long since gave up on that in some way because I didn't want to move to LA. And it's hard to have a career in acting here. A little, yeah. And so, but yeah, some people think, well, I'll start on the ground and move my way up. I think that is valuable. And I think you'll be a better creator for that. But you're not doing it to build the relationships to move up, and I think a lot of people misunderstand that. You're doing it so you can learn the craft. Yeah. And once you feel like you've mastered the craft or you have a grasp of the craft, you should go and make your own thing. And if you're a person that doesn't want to do that, I say go and make your own thing. Let's see where you're at. If you make your own thing and it sucks, you have learned, I need to go back and learn. If you make your own thing and it's amazing, you're P.T. Anderson, then we've just learned that you're P.T. Anderson, and we want to see your work as early as possible so we can see as much of it as we can before your sad demise, So there's never going to be a bad thing about getting out there and doing it yourself. And if you're a tradesman, if you're a cinematographer, gaffer, designer, whatever it might be, go volunteer for those kids that are making movies wherever you are, at whatever level you can. And you'll be surprised how quickly that transitions you into a career, I guess that would be my advice.
Very cool. Well, this is my first year with the Lone Star Film Festival, and it's just been so much. There's been so much great stuff and meeting so many great folks. And like you said, you've been in here since the inception. Like, how have you seen it grow through the years?
Well, honestly, I have been here since the first year of Lone Star in this community, and I was at the first fest and all that stuff. But this is the first year that I've gotten to come every day of the fest and really invest. Because sadly, I've always been working in some capacity, and I wasn't at a place in my career where I could actually take off and get to enjoy it and make the commitment. I would say that, again, from my layman look at it, because I've never been involved in the fest other than my movies playing. I would say that one thing I love that's happened in the last few years about Lone Star is it has localized a bit. They still have movies that are nationally relevant, but they also have a lot of movies that are coming out of Texas in some way, and I think that's a shift in general in the paradigm of film festivals. We want some localization. We want to embrace those entities that are coming out of our world and help propel them into the world at large, and then we want to bring back films from the world at large into our world. That's become a little bit more of a symbiotic relationship that I think is really interesting and healthy and fun, and it makes the festival more engaging. So and I think we've gotten more in that world. And then, one thing that they've done consistently that I think speaks volumes about this kind of festival is they've always brought really valuable players from the industry to come in, to share time, to give feedback, and to obviously screen their movies. And this year's no different. Jeff Nichols and Michael DeLuca. I mean, those guys are epically big players in the field and craftsmen, and to have the opportunity to have them in our backyard, literally in their case, literally in our backyard, and then come here and spend time with us at the fest is impeccable. And Lone Star has consistently done that, whether it's Jeff Bridges and Martin Sheen or like this year, Jeff Nichols and Michael DeLuca. Every year they bring somebody of international class. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was also interesting, sitting in DeLuca's talk, hearing his path through the business to where he is today, but then hearing him talk about his stumble with a particular film and how in the franchise it was the weakest one of the franchise, and people they've still made more Leatherface films, and his was the lowest grossing of all of them. But
failure is a good lesson.
Failure is a good lesson, but then it didn't stop him. He kept going.
Yeah, honestly, I take a lot from that. I'm obviously not at the place that he is in his career, and he's only 15 years older than me or so. But that I think that's a bird chirping or something. Hearing him talking about how he faced adversity or failure and drove through it, and I think I recognize that in my own life in a different way of hitting those walls and deciding I'm not going to be stopped by that. I'm just going to keep going. And that's a big, important lesson, no matter how successful you are in this business. If you're successful right out of the gate or if it takes a while longer, perseverance is key, and relentless, resilient spirit is evident in almost everyone that I know that has a career of any kind, and especially in those that are successful, because you're going to hit a wall every day. Making a movie is one of the hardest things to do. Even with the accessibility of the tools that we have now, it's still just an incredible challenge. And I've been doing it for 12 years, and I feel like I'm still just now scratching the surface of some of the things that are necessary to make a movie. So yeah, it was cool to hear him say. He went from that franchise movie, to this giant success in his career that incorporated, Snoop Dogg's first contribution to a film soundtrack and a #1 hit, and talked about how you're way down, and then all of a sudden, because of your perseverance and your relentlessness, you're back in the A game, and people are calling and saying, how are we going to do something together?
Right.
So.
And then you said it was 12 years that you've been working in the business.
In film specifically, I've been an artist my whole adult life, like a working artist. That's the only thing I've ever done in life, so that's 21 years at this point.
Now, how have you seen the business from your perspective change?
It's an interesting thing because as the industry has changed, I've changed. Not just as a human being, I think we all do, but in my career paths. I started as a theater actor, and then I became a theater actor, writer, director, producer, designer by default, and then I became a multimedia of those things. So not just theater anymore, but a multimedia actor, writer, director, producer, designer. Then I transitioned into film, and all of a sudden, I'm just a designer and art director again. And I'm acting as a hobbyist, and people don't even know that I'm an actor, So, and then that thing goes through several evolutions, and now I'm a writer, director, producer again with a design background, and so in that weird way, I've changed in all these ways. But I can speak to one case in particular that is really relevant in my journey. Is from a very early age, after being in this industry in theater, multimedia, film for about 2 or 3 years, when people would ask me what I was, I would say I was a multi-hyphenate. And at the time, no one knew what that word meant, and people would laugh at me and kind of take me like a con man or a novice, But in reality, I was born into that world that was transitioning from a unionized industry into a world of entrepreneurs, which is where we are now. We have so many entrepreneurs making their own movies outside of the studio system, and then finding ways to distribute them in all these different platforms. And so by necessity, we've been forced into being multi-hyphenates. You're no longer given the luxury of just being a director or a gaffer or a such and such, So I experienced that transition where people literally would laugh at me for saying it, to the point I remember I was in LA doing a job, and a very prominent producer, somebody had asked me, what do I do? And a very prominent producer interrupted and said, he's a multi-hyphenate. And they go, huh, what's that? And I remember she said, he does everything you do, but he does it all at once. And I was like, wow, that's a totally shift. It's a complete shift when somebody of that kind of power and prowess kind of defends you without being asked, and recognizes that you can be multiple things and do it successfully. And that shift you see all throughout the world, right? I mean, you have people that are country singers, that are country writers, that are country producers, that are movie stars, and they're all of those things, and that's okay. When you have Lady Gaga doing her first acting portrayal, and it's welcomed, and people are skeptical like you are on anything, but then immediately receptive to it. That's a shift, I think.
Yeah, I still have yet to see that film, but that trailer, definitely made me want to go see it. It's on my radar, especially when it gets to the part like they introduce her. I'm like, okay, it's Lady Gaga. I've been aware of her music. I can't say I was really a fan before.
Sure, yeah.
But then hearing when she comes in all hauntingly in that song in the trailer, I was just like, I got goosebumps, and I was just like, oh my god, like I understand now why people were fans of hers.
Yeah, that's
before.
And it's a perfect. It's like a beacon to the multi-hyphenate, right? It's like Bradley Cooper is starring in it. He wrote the adaptation. He's directing it. He's producing it. Lady Gaga's, and they both created the music for it. She's acting in it. Just this really cool new kind of world that we're in, where creators are more than just one thing. And I think we see that outside of film too. I mean, I think in our world today, you turn 18 or 21 and you become a post office worker, and that's what you are until you're 60 and you retire. Now we're seeing that shift regularly. Somebody does post office for 18 years, 20 years, then they move in. Now they're an electrical engineer for 20 years. Now they move in. Now there's something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's becoming more common, I think, in general in our world. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. And I know a lot of people from the old world probably are like, they want people to focus on one thing and one task and master it. And I think that's cool. I just don't think we have that luxury anymore.
Unfortunately, we don't. It used to be a thing, like you were saying, people, from practically birth to, starting their career and end their career in one place. But, it's gotten to a point where companies aren't, they have a pick of the litter if they want, and companies need to stay nimble, so they have to bring in new talent to, be able to shift and pivot and stuff. So, I see it on the company side, but then also, which that hurts the people that, that end up wanting to stick with one trade.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, a plumber or electrician, we're definitely always going to need people like those, which are going to be the backbone of society and stuff like that. But, sometimes, there are people, a lot of people have dreams, but then there are some people that just want to do one thing.
Yeah, sure. And that's amazing. And if you can, I think, that's your dream. That's cool, And if you happen to be a plumber that has a different dream, and you plumb, and you work on your thing on the side, and if you're lucky, that thing becomes the thing, and plumbing's on the side now,
Right.
And then maybe plumbing doesn't exist anymore.
I think there'll always be plumbing.
Yeah, well, for you, for that plumber,
for
that plumber, yeah. Again, and maybe this is the larger truth that we're talking about, is I think we live in a world where we're more accepting of whatever it is that you want to do and your path. We don't naysay it as much anymore. We say, do your path. We've got enough examples in the world where somebody's taken their own path and they've become exactly what they were meant to be, nothing like anyone else, on paper shouldn't have been able to achieve their path, and broken through all the stereotypes and adversities that one can. And with that kind of volume of examples, it's almost like, well, what are we doing? Why are we saying that anything is impossible? It's all possible. It's flavor. It's your flavor. You choose it. And that's kind of an exciting maker's world, right? Where any kid can be anything, and we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there, And it's a pretty dope turn of events, I think, for the world in general, is that we're actually in a place where we're saying, we welcome somebody to challenge the status quo,
Definitely. That might be a pretty good place to end this, but go ahead and you want to give people your social media, how people can find more information about the film and all that.
Yeah, we would love for people to check out the movie. The movie's called Knowing. My partner and I have a company called Adam and Elliot Moving Pictures. You can check us out on Facebook, Adam and Elliot Moving Pictures. Just look that up. The movie's doing the festival circuit right now. We don't know where it'll go after festival, but we do have our other short film, The Flood, starring Ed Asner, is going to play at Oxford Film Fest in Mississippi in the beginning of 2019, and we're excited about the rest of the festival circuit for Knowing. We just don't have any new announcements yet, so please, follow us on Facebook and reach out. We'd love to collaborate. We'd love to talk film with somebody. So.
Very cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Michael.
No problem. That's the podcast. Be sure to follow everybody and check out their upcoming work and their current work. I had a blast at the film festival, but you can keep up with the Avert Your Eyes podcast or check out past episodes by visiting our website, avertyoureyespod.com. There you'll find everything you need to subscribe to the podcast, with links to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to leave a comment or review. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Michael Gibson Jr., and until next time on the Avert Your Eyes podcast, consider yourself warned.